Hello, coaster fans. Today's video, we're going to talk about our experiences at Cedar Point on Saturday, October 10th, 2020. Anyone who has ever visited Cedar Point on a Saturday in October knows that it's not necessarily going to be the greatest experience. The park will be filled to capacity and every coaster is going to have at least an hour wait, and the most popular rides will often queue out to 2 hours or more. The park is going to be crowded, and you're going to spend way more time in line than you will on rides. Even with these crowds, a typical October Saturday at Cedar Point is still a fun experience. On our 2018 October Saturday visit, despite the huge crowds, we still rode nine coasters, several flats, and had a great time. My view has always been that a bad day at a theme park is better than a good day of sitting at home. So going on an expected busy day at the Point has never stopped me from making the drive to America's roller coast. With that being said, our 2020 visit may have finally been the park experience that changes my philosophy on when I'm willing to go out and visit the Point. To say that Cedar Point was crowded on this visit simply doesn't do the situation justice. The park was beyond packed. The midways were so crowded that it was really difficult to walk through them, and even the bad rides had multi-hour waits. Seriously, Rougarou had a 150-minute wait all day. I can't imagine waiting 2.5 hours to receive a mild concussion, but the situation was so bad that people were doing exactly that. I'm not sure what percentage of capacity Cedar Point allowed to make reservations, but it was obvious to me that they were not nearly conservative enough in this regard. We all know that 2020 has been a difficult year in the theme park industry, and that the restrictions that have been put into place that allow parks to operate safely have drastically reduced their capacity to support guests. While restrictions such as masks and social distancing markers and temperature screenings have very little downside on capacity, the reduction in capacity that results from leaving rows open on rides and having cleaning cycles every 30 minutes is significant. Combine this with the staffing challenges that result in slower dispatch times and some rides being closed altogether, the overall riders per hour capacity of the park can't possibly be over 25% of its ideal rate. It's not a great situation for anyone. While I was at the park, I chatted with quite a few guests. One of the things that really stuck with me was that nobody was having a good time. Over and over again, I heard people complain that they had been at the park all day and had only ridden 1 or 2 rides. I talked to one person who told me he's been going to the Point 20 times a year for over 20 years and has never had a day where he's gotten as few rides in as he had on this day. Every single person I talked to did nothing but complain. It was obvious that no one was having the best day ever. For me, the most impactful conversation of the day was with a guy I met when we were walking out of the park. His comment to me was that Cedar Point ripped me off. They said they were taking reservations to make sure there weren't too many people in the park, but they just wanted to take our money. I was here for 8 hours, paid admission, paid for parking, paid for food, and only rode 2 rides the entire day. This place sucks and I'm never coming back. Our day was not as bad as this guy's was, but it was still less than ideal. We entered the park around 11 and went immediately to get in line for Top Thrill Dragster's Access Pass. Chatting with the ride-op, he told us that due to the high winds, Dragster is not likely to open for a few hours, and we may be better off trying to get access passes or something else. We ended up snagging access passes to board Maverick between 1 and 2, and passes to board Millennium Force between 2 and 3. We thought we were off to a great start. After grabbing the passes, we were pretty close to Valraven, and we saw that its wait was only listed as 45 minutes, so we entered the queue around 12:15. A little over an hour later, we were finally done with our ride on Valraven. We jogged through the park to get to Maverick, and made it into the queue around 1:30. We waited for about an hour and a half to get our ride on Maverick, getting out of the ride at exactly 2:58. We only had 2 minutes to get to Millennium Force before the end of our window. We ran as fast as we could, but we ended up getting to Millennium Force about 5 minutes after our time slot ended. The ride-op at the gate to Millennium Force saw us panting after our run and had mercy upon us and allowed us to enter the queue even though our access passes had technically expired 5 minutes ago. Despite the huge crowds of angry guests, every single employee we interacted with throughout the day was awesome. I really appreciate them continuing to do everything they can to provide a great experience, even when there really is nothing they can do to make everybody happy. We waited for about an hour and a half to get our ride on Millie, and got off right as the 4:30 access pass window opened up. We resisted the urge to grab another pass from Millennium Force, even though we were right there as they started to hand them out. We wanted to make sure other guests had a chance to ride this ride as well. We made it to the Dragster Access Pass distribution point at 4:38, but by this point all the passes are gone. Talking to another guest who had been there at exactly 4:30, she told us they were gone even before she arrived. Apparently they had started passing out the evening passes earlier in the day for Dragster. At this point, we had not had a chance to grab a bite to eat or hit the bathroom all day. There simply hadn't been time. We attended to nature and then got some food at Chicky and Pete's. By the time we were done eating, it was about 5:45, and there were a few rides with wait time short enough to get us on the ride before the park closed at 8. We ended up simply taking a lap of the park to get some footage and hit the road around 7 p.m. We had spent 8 hours in the park and ridden 3 rides. Based off my conversations with other guests, I think we actually did better than most of them. We are coaster enthusiasts, and as a result, Jess and I have a higher tolerance for a day like this than most people do. For us, this was not the best day at Cedar Point, but it certainly wasn't enough to prevent us from ever returning to the park again. For the GP, however, this may not necessarily be the case. As both a Cedar Fair shareholder and a coaster enthusiast, I am happy that so many people wanted to spend the day at Cedar Point. I want the park to make money and thrive. My concern, that is in an effort to make as much money as possible to recoup a terrible season, Cedar Point simply allowed too many people to make reservations, and the result was an experience that'll cause many guests to never want to return, and it may actually end up costing the park more revenue in the long run. I hope that Cedar Point further reduces the number of reservations available for the last few weeks of this season, and I really hope that by next season, the capacity-killing COVID prevention measures will be a thing of the past, and it won't be necessary to limit attendance at all. That being said, we all know that Saturdays in October are the busiest days of the year at Cedar Point, and while I'll certainly visit Cedar Point again next year, I, for one, will not be likely to visit again in October. I love riding coasters, but there are plenty of other parks that provide a better guest experience in October that I could spend my time at. If you've had a better or worse experience at Cedar Point in October this year than I have, I would love to hear about it in the comments section. And if you'd enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing for more content from Coaster Center. Until next time, ride on, coaster fans.